This channel has been established for visually impaired people. For the visually impaired people, voice narration and a written expression are also provided for the hearing impaired. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. NATO-led international involvement in Afghanistan 2001–2014 Fall of the Taliban government in Afghanistan Destruction of al-Qaeda camps Taliban insurgency War in northwest Pakistan Killing of Osama bin Laden Death of Mohammed Omar War in Afghanistan 2015 Present Initiation of Operation Resolute Support by NATO Transfer of combat roles to Afghan Armed Forces US-Afghanistan Strategic Partnership Agreement Insurgency in Yemen 1992–2015 Drone strikes being conducted by US and Pakistani forces al-Qaeda Emirate in Yemen is declared on 31 March 2011 Insurgency escalates into a full-scale civil war in 2015 Iraq War 2003–2011, overthrow of the Baath party government in Iraq Execution of Saddam Hussein Free elections Iraqi insurgency 2011–2014 Ongoing civil war 2014 Present death of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi in June 2006 War in northwest Pakistan 2004 Present, ongoing insurgency Large part of FATA under Taliban control Shifting public support for the Pakistani government Killing of Osama bin Laden Drone strikes being conducted by the CIA International Campaign Against ISIL 2014 Present, ongoing insurgency Operation Inherent Resolve US-led coalition airstrikes on ISIL positions in Iraq, Syria, Egyptian airstrikes in Libya, and West African airstrikes in Nigeria Multinational humanitarian effort arming and support for local ground forces ISIL beheadings Other OEF Horn of Africa OEF Philippines OEF Trans-Sahara OEF Caribbean and Central America belligerents NATO participants Operation Enduring Freedom Allies Northern Alliance Multinational Force, Iraq Combined Joint Task Force, Horn of Africa Combined Joint Task Force, Operation Inherent Resolve Note, most contributing nations are included in the international operations main targets, al-Qaeda Lashkar al-Zil Aqap Ansar al-Sharia Aqim al-Murabiton Aqis al-Shabaab al-Nusra Khorasan Aqkb Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant Sinai Province Libya Province Jund al-Khilafa Khorasan Province Yemen Province Boko Haram Caucasus Province Abu Sayyaf Sheikh Omar Hadid Brigade IMU Taliban Others Islamic Emirate of Waziristan Turek I Taliban Pakistan Osbat al-Ansar Haqqani Network TNSM Ansar Dine Jund al-Aqsa Raja Sulayman Movement Ansar al-Sharia Libya Caucasus Emirate Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters Hamas Hezbollah Islamic Jihad Movement in Palestine Lashkar al-Zil Lashkar-e Taiba Lashkar-e Omar Lashkar-e Jangvi Hizbul Mujahideen Islamic Jihad of Yemen Ansarullah Dadullah Front Fideh Mahaz Ansar al-Sharia Derna, Libya Shura Council of Benghazi Revolutionaries Ansar al-Sharia Tunisia MOJWA Islamic Jihad Union East Turkestan Islamic Movement Masked Brigade Jaish-e-Mohammed Hezbe Islami Gubudin Arar Ash Sham Fatah al-Islam Jund al-Aqsa Jama' Ansharut Tawheed Jaish al-Islam Indian Mujahideen Black Banner Organization Harkat ul-Mujahideen Harakat Sham al-Islam Great Eastern Islamic Raiders Front Moroccan Islamic Combatant Group Soldiers of Egypt Harkat ul-Jihad al-Islami Raja Sulayman Movement Tunisian Combatant Group Salafia Jihadiya Ansar al-Sharia Mali Ansar al-Sharia Mauritania Ansar al-Sharia Morocco Ansar al-Sharia Libya Ansar al-Sharia Egypt Ansar al-Sharia Yarmouk area Abu Sayyaf Jama' Islamiyah Former al-Qaeda in Iraq until 2006 Islamic State of Iraq until 2013 Jundallah Tariq-e-Khilafat until November 2014 Jamaat ul-Ahrar until March 2015 Iraqi Baath Party Loyalists Islamic Courts Union Dis Salafist Group for Preaching and Combat until 2007 Jamaat ul-Ahrar until 2015 Ansar al-Sharia Syria until 2016 Commanders and Leaders George W. Bush President 2001–2009 Barack Obama President 2009 Present Tony Blair Prime Minister 1997–2007 Gordon Brown Prime Minister 2007–2010, David Cameron Prime Minister 2010–2016, Theresa May Prime Minister 2016–present, Jacques Chirac President 1995–2007, Nicolas Sarkozy President 2007–2012, François Hollande President 2012–present, Gerhard Schröder Chancellor 1998–2005, Angela Merkel Chancellor 2005–present, Silvio Berlusconi President of the Council 2001–2006 and 2008–2011, Romano Prodi President of the Council 2006–2008, Matteo Renzi President of the Council 2014–present, Pervez Musharraf President 1999–2008, General Raheel Sharif Chief of Army Staff 2013–present. John Howard Prime Minister 1996–2007, Alexander Kwasniewski President 1995–2005, Recep Tayyip Erdogan Prime Minister 2003–2014, President 2014–present, General Jean Kawaji Commander-in-Chief of the Lebanese Armed Forces, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo President 2001–2010, Benigno Aquino III President 2010–2016, Al-Qaeda Osama bin Laden. Qasim al-Raymi Emir of Aqap, Abdelmalek Drukdel Emir of Aqim, Mokhtar Belmokhtar. Deputy Emir of ISIL Abu Muslim al-Turkmani. Emir of Boko Haram Taliban Muhammad Omar, First Supreme Commander of the Taliban. Jalaluddin Haqqani. 11 History of the name 12 The Rhetorical War on Terror 2 Background 21 Precursor to the 11th of September attacks 22 September 11, 2001 Attacks 3 U.S. Objectives 4 Afghanistan 41 Operation Enduring Freedom 42 Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan 43 International Security Assistance Force 5 Iraq and Syria 51 Iraqi No-Fly Zones 52 Operation Iraqi Freedom 53 Operation New Dawn 54 Operation Inherent Resolve Syria and Iraq 6 Pakistan 61 Baluchistan 7 Trans-Sahara Northern Africa 71 Operation Enduring Freedom 17 Costs 18 Criticism 19 Other Wars on Terror 20 See also 21 Notes 22 References 221 Bibliography 23 Further reading 24 External links Etymology Letter from Barack Obama indicating appropriation of congressional funds for overseas contingency operations, global war on terrorism. The phrase «war on terror» has been used to specifically refer to the ongoing military campaign led by the US, UK and their allies against organizations and regimes identified by them as terrorist, and excludes other independent counter-terrorist operations and campaigns such as those by Russia and India. The conflict has also been referred to by names other than the War on Terror. It has also been known as World War III. World War IV assuming the Cold War was World War III Bush's War on Terror the Long War the Global War on Terror the War against al-Qaeda History of the name In 1984, the Reagan administration used the term «war against terrorism» as part of an effort to pass legislation that was designed to freeze assets of terrorist groups and marshal the forces of government against them. Author Shane Harris asserts this was a reaction to the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing, which killed 241 U.S. and 58 French peacekeepers. The concept of America at war with terrorism may have begun on the 11th of September 2001 when Tom Brokaw, having just witnessed the collapse of one of the towers of the World Trade Center, declared terrorists have declared war on the 16th of September 2001 at Camp David. President George W. Bush used the phrase war on terrorism in an unscripted and controversial comment when he said, "This crusade, this war on terrorism, is going to take a while." Bush later apologized for this remark due to the negative connotations the term crusade has to people, e.g. of Muslim faith. The word crusade was not used again on 20 September 2001, during a televised address to a joint session of Congress. Bush stated that, "Our war on terror begins with al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated." In April 2007, the British government announced publicly that it was abandoning the use of the phrase «war on terror» as they found it to be less than helpful. This was explained more recently by Lady Eliza Manningham Buller in her 2011 Reith lecture. The former head of MI5 said that the 9/11 attacks were a crime, not an act of war, so I never felt it helpful to refer to a war on terror. U.S. President Barack Obama has rarely used the term, but in his inaugural address on 20 January 2009, he stated, "Our nation is at war, against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred." In March 2009, the Defense Department officially changed the name of operations from Global War on Terror to Overseas Contingency Operation (OCO). In March 2009, the Obama administration requested that Pentagon staff members avoid use of the term, instead using Overseas Contingency Operation. Basic objectives of the Bush administration War on Terror, such as targeting al-Qaeda and building international counterterrorism alliances, remain in place. In December 2012, Jay Johnson, the General Counsel of the Department of Defense, stated that the military fight will be replaced by a law enforcement operation when speaking at Oxford University, predicting that al-Qaeda will be so weakened to be ineffective, and has been effectively destroyed, and thus the conflict will not be an armed conflict under international law. In May 2013, Obama stated that the goal is to dismantle specific networks of violent extremists that threaten America, which coincided with the U.S. Office of Management and Budget having changed the wording from Overseas Contingency Operations to Countering Violent Extremism. In 2010, the rhetorical War on Terror, because the actions involved in the War on Terrorism are diffuse, and the criteria for inclusion are unclear. Political theorist Richard Jackson has argued that the war on terrorism, therefore, is simultaneously a set of actual practices, wars, covert operations, agencies, and institutions, and an accompanying series of assumptions, beliefs, justifications, and narratives. It is an entire language or discourse. Jackson cites among many examples a statement by John Ashcroft that the attacks of September 11 drew a bright line of demarcation between the civil and the savage. Administration officials also described terrorists as hateful, treacherous, barbarous, mad, twisted, perverted, without faith, parasitical, inhuman, and, most commonly, evil. Americans, in contrast, were described as brave, loving, generous, strong, resourceful, heroic, and respectful of human rights. Both the term and the policies it denotes have been a source of ongoing controversy, as critics argue it has been used to justify unilateral preventive war, human rights abuses and other violations of international law. Background precursor to the 11th of September attacks. See also, terrorism and list of terrorist incidents. The origins of al-Qaeda can be traced to the Soviet War in Afghanistan December 1979 to February 1989. The United States, United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and the People's Republic of China supported the Islamist Afghan Mujahideen guerrillas against the military forces of the Soviet Union and the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. A small number of Afghan Arab volunteers joined the fight against the Soviets, including Osama bin Laden, but there is no evidence they received any external assistance. In May 1996, the group World Islamic Front for Jihad Against Jews and Crusaders WIFJAJC, sponsored by bin Laden and later reformed as al-Qaeda, started forming a large base of operations in Afghanistan, where the Islamist extremist regime of the Taliban had seized power earlier in the year. In February 1998, Osama bin Laden signed a fatwa, as head of al-Qaeda, declaring war on the West and Israel. Later in May of that same year, al-Qaeda released a video declaring war on the U.S. and the West. On 7 August 1998, al-Qaeda struck the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing 224 people, including 12 Americans. In retaliation, U.S. President Bill Clinton launched Operation Infinite Reach, a bombing campaign in Sudan and Afghanistan against targets the U.S. asserted were associated with WIFJAJC, although others have questioned whether a pharmaceutical plant in Sudan was used as a chemical warfare plant. The plant produced much of the region's antimalarial drugs and around 50% of Sudan's pharmaceutical needs. The strikes failed to kill any leaders of WIFJAJC or the Taliban. Next came the 2000 Millennium Attack plots, which included an attempted bombing of Los Angeles International Airport on 12 October 2000, the USS Cole bombing occurred near the port of Yemen, and 17 U.S. Navy sailors were killed. September 11, 2001 attacks. Main article, September 11 attacks. On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 men affiliated with al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airliners all bound for California. Once the hijackers assumed control of the airliners, they told the passengers that they had a bomb on board and would spare the lives of passengers and crew once their demands were met. No passenger and crew actually suspected that they would use the airliners as suicide weapons, since it had never happened before in history, and many previous hijacking attempts had been resolved with the passengers and crew escaping unharmed after obeying the hijackers. The hijackers, members of al-Qaeda's Hamburg cell, intentionally crashed 2 airliners into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Both buildings collapsed within 2 hours from fire damage related to the crashes, destroying nearby buildings and damaging others. The hijackers crashed a third airliner into the Pentagon in Arlington County, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. The fourth plane crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after some of its passengers and flight crew attempted to retake control of the plane, which the hijackers had redirected toward Washington, D.C., to target the White House, or the U.S. Capitol. No flights had survivors. A total of 2,977 victims, and the 19 hijackers perished in the attacks' U.S. objectives. For the attacks on the 11th of September 2001, it authorized the President to use all necessary and appropriate force against those nations, organizations, or persons he determines planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on the 11th of September 2001, or harbored such organizations or persons, in order to prevent any future acts of international terrorism against the United States by such nations, organizations or persons. Congress declares this is intended to constitute specific statutory authorization within the meaning of Section 5B of the War Powers Resolution of 1973. The George W. Bush administration defined the following objectives in the War on Terror: defeat terrorists such as Osama bin Laden, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi and demolish their organizations. Identify, locate and demolish terrorists along with their organizations. Deny sponsorship, support and sanctuary to terrorists. End the state sponsorship of terrorism. Establish and maintain an international standard of accountability with regard to combating terrorism. Strengthen and sustain the international effort to combat terrorism. Work with willing and able states. Enable weak states. Persuade reluctant states. Compel unwilling states. Interdict and disorder material support for terrorists. Abolish terrorist sanctuaries and havens. Diminish the underlying conditions that terrorists seek to exploit. Partner with the international community to strengthen weak states and prevent re-emergence of terrorism. Win the war of ideals. Defend U.S. citizens and interests at home and abroad. Integrate the national strategy for homeland security. Attain domain awareness. Enhance measures to ensure the integrity, reliability, and availability of critical, physical, and information-based infrastructures at home and abroad. Implement measures to protect U.S. citizens abroad. Ensure an integrated incident management capability. Afghanistan. U.S. Army soldier of the 10th Mountain Division in Nuristan Province, June 2007. Operation Enduring Freedom. Main article, Operation Enduring Freedom Campaign Streamer awarded to units who have participated in Operation Enduring Freedom. Operation Enduring Freedom is the official name used by the Bush administration for the war in Afghanistan, together with 3 smaller military actions, under the umbrella of the global war on terror. These global operations are intended to seek out and destroy any al-Qaeda fighters or affiliates. Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan. Main article, War in Afghanistan 2001–14. See also, War in Afghanistan 2015. Present and list of military operations in the war in Afghanistan 2001–14. On 20 September 2001, in the wake of the 11th of September attacks, George W. Bush delivered an ultimatum to the Taliban government of Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, to turn over Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda leaders operating in the country or face attack. The Taliban demanded evidence of bin Laden's link to the 11th of September attacks and, if such evidence warranted a trial, they offered to handle such a trial in an Islamic court. The U.S. refused to provide any evidence. Subsequently, in October 2001, U.S. forces with UK and coalition allies invaded Afghanistan to oust the Taliban regime. On 7 October 2001, the official invasion began with British and U.S. forces conducting airstrike campaigns over enemy targets. Kabul, the capital city of Afghanistan, fell by mid-November. The remaining al-Qaeda and Taliban remnants fell back to the rugged mountains of eastern Afghanistan, mainly Tora Bora. In December, coalition forces, the U.S. and its allies, fought within that region. It is believed that Osama bin Laden escaped into Pakistan during the battle in March 2002. The U.S. and other NATO and non-NATO forces launched Operation Anaconda with the goal of destroying any remaining al-Qaeda and Taliban forces in the Shah-i-Kot Valley and Arma Mountains of Afghanistan. The Taliban suffered heavy casualties and evacuated the region. The Taliban regrouped in western Pakistan and began to unleash an insurgent-style offensive against coalition forces in late 2002 throughout southern and eastern Afghanistan. Firefights broke out between the surging Taliban and coalition forces. Coalition coalition forces responded with a series of military offensives and an increase in the amount of troops in Afghanistan. In February 2010, coalition forces launched Operation Mushtarak in southern Afghanistan along with other military offensives in the hopes that they would destroy the Taliban insurgency once and for all. Peace talks are also underway between Taliban-affiliated fighters and coalition forces. In September 2014, Afghanistan and the United States signed a security agreement, which permits United States and NATO forces to remain in Afghanistan until at least 2024. The United States and other NATO and non-NATO forces are planning to withdraw, with the Taliban claiming it has defeated the United States and NATO, and the Obama administration viewing it as a victory. In December 2014, ISAF encasing its colors, and Resolute support began as the NATO operation in Afghanistan continued. United States operations within Afghanistan will continue under the name Operation Freedom Sentinel. International Security Assistance Force. Main article, International Security Assistance Force. Map of countries contributing troops to ISAF as of 5 March 2010. Major contributors over 1,000 troops in dark green, other contributors in light green, and former contributors in magenta. December 2001 saw the creation of the NATO-led International Security Assistance Force ISAF to assist the Afghan Transitional Administration and the first post-Taliban elected government with a renewed Taliban insurgency. It was announced in 2006 that ISAF would replace the U.S. troops in the province as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. The British 16th Air Assault Brigade, later reinforced by Royal Marines, formed the core of the force in southern Afghanistan, along with troops and helicopters from Australia, Canada and the Netherlands. The initial force consisted of roughly 3,300 British, 2,000 Canadian, 1,400 from the Netherlands and 240 from Australia, along with special forces from Denmark and Estonia and small contingents from other nations. The monthly supply of cargo containers through Pakistani route to ISAF in Afghanistan is over 4,000, costing around 12 billion in Pakistani rupees. Iraq and Syria. Further information, Iraq War and the War on Terror. A British C-130J Hercules aircraft launches flare countermeasures prior to being the first coalition aircraft to land on the newly reopened military runway at Baghdad International Airport. Iraq had been listed as a state sponsor of terrorism by the U.S. since 1990, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Iraq had also been on the list from 1979 to 1982. It was removed so that the U.S. could provide material support to Iraq in its war with Iran. Hussein's regime had proven to be a problem for the UN and Iraq's neighbors due to its use of chemical weapons against Iranians and Kurds in the 1980s. Iraqi no-fly zones. Following the ceasefire agreement that suspended hostilities but not officially ended in the 1991 Gulf War, the United States and its allies instituted and began patrolling Iraqi no-fly zones, to protect Iraq's Kurdish and Shia Arab population, both of which suffered attacks from the Hussein regime before and after the Gulf War. In Iraq's northern and southern regions, respectively, U.S. forces continued in combat zone deployments through November 1995 and launched Operation Desert Fox against Iraq in 1998 after it failed to meet U.S. demands of unconditional cooperation in weapons inspections in the aftermath of Operation Desert Fox. During December 1998, Iraq announced that it would no longer respect the no-fly zones and resumed its attempts to shoot down U.S. aircraft. Operation Iraqi Freedom. Main article, Iraq War. The Iraq War began in March 2003 with an air campaign, which was immediately followed by US-led ground invasion. The Bush administration stated the invasion was the serious consequences spoken of in the UNSC Resolution 1441, partially on the basis of Iraq possessing weapons of mass destruction. The Bush administration also stated the Iraq War was part of the War on Terror, something later questioned or contested. The first ground attack came at the Battle of Qasr on 21 March 2003 when a combined force of British, American and Polish forces seized control of the port city of Qasr. Baghdad, Iraq's capital city, fell to American forces in April 2003 and Saddam Hussein's government quickly dissolved on 1 May 2003. Bush announced that major combat operations in Iraq had ended. However, an insurgency arose against the US-led coalition and the newly Developing Iraqi military and post-Saddam government. The insurgency, which included al-Qaeda-affiliated groups, led to far more coalition casualties than the invasion. Other elements of the insurgency were led by fugitive members of President Hussein's Baath regime, which included Iraqi nationalists and pan-Arabists. Many insurgency leaders are Islamists and claim to be fighting a religious war to re-establish the Islamic Caliphate of centuries past. Iraq's former president, Saddam Hussein, was captured by U.S. forces in December 2003. He was executed in 2006. In 2004, the insurgent forces grew stronger. The U.S. conducted attacks on insurgent strongholds in cities like Najaf and Fallujah. In January 2007, President Bush presented a new strategy for Operation Iraqi Freedom based upon counter-insurgency theories and tactics developed by General David Petraeus. The Iraq war troop surge of 2007 was part of this new way forward and, along with U.S. backing of Sunni groups it had previously sought to defeat, has been credited with a widely recognized dramatic decrease in violence by up to 80%. Operation New Dawn. The war entered a new phase on 1 September 2010, with the official end of U.S. combat operations. The last U.S. troops exited Iraq on 18 December 2011. Operation Inherent Resolve. Syria and Iraq. Main articles: 2014 military intervention against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, timeline of the Iraqi insurgency. 2014 spillover of the Syrian civil war, American-led intervention in Syria. 2014 American-led intervention in Iraq, and list of wars and battles involving ISIL. Tomahawk missiles being fired from USS